3 to 4 months after his health scare, we went back in, had another test, and all signs of it were gone because we had changed the way we ate.
Wow.
This was about 20 years ago. My son had a health scare, and I thought I had been eating, I thought we had been eating pretty healthy, but we got all of our food from the grocery store. I don't know if I had ever been to a farmer's market before. And he had this health scare, and the doctor said, you need to eat a lot more fruits and vegetables, cut out processed food. Um, so I did that. And we started getting more vegetables. And then I found out about a farmer's market in we lived in Dallas at this time. We were buying pretty much all of our produce at the farmer's market. And we felt so much better. We all lost weight. We felt good. My digestion got very um regular.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
3 to 4 months after his health scare, we went back in, had another test, and all signs of it were gone because we had changed the way we ate. There was a shooting in San Diego at a synagogue, and it was kind of close to where I lived, and it just it just shook me. And I thought, if people could come together and cook together and eat together, then we wouldn't have these problems. We could learn about each other, and we can find ways to accept each other. We don't have to all be the same, but we can accept each other and learn to live together. And actually, there have been a lot of studies done on the relationship with food and mental health. And the standard American diet, which is loaded with processed food and, you know, just a lot of junk, does not help your mental health.
But there's something about nourishing yourself and with a gratitude and understanding where the food came from and understanding, like you said, your connection with the farmers and so forth somehow supports the digestion. And I mean, is that where the love comes from? I'm just guessing.
It's kind of a healing process for me, I
Right.
I think.
It's like,
That's where the love comes from, is what
mhm.
you're putting into it. Um, you could be angry. I'm not saying that you can't cook angry or frustrated or stressed. You can do that. But remember that that may come through in the food. I definitely agree that diversity is the way that we're going to heal. Diversity of not just food, but people, diversity of ideas. She lives in another part of the world, yet and she barely spoke English, and I don't speak Korean, and we we connected over food. I think there's room for everyone to be who they are and still have a peaceful world. We just have to, I don't know, maybe it's very simplistic, but I feel like it's a simple solution that I feel like simple solutions can be the answer. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Welcome to Bridging the Potential. This is the podcast that brings people from around the world who are actually living their potential. And it's my great pleasure today to bring in Julie Diaz. Julie has an amazing vision, and I've had a wonderful opportunity to be working with her over the last couple of years. She's actually a facilitator in our Living the Potential network, and she has a passion for cooking and such a passion for healthy food. And what does healthy food have to do with? Actually, peace. She has a vision called Cook for Peace. and a cooking revolution. And they come together because something happens when people connect with food that's healthy for them and they share their stories. So, welcome, Julie. We're really happy to have you here. Thank you for being
Thank,
here.
thank you, Renee Beth. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited and honored to be here.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud of you because you're very talented in your vision and how it's come to be. And for people that may have heard of Julie Diaz, it might be because it's the Cooking Revolution on Facebook and also Clarksdale Cooks on Facebook. And you have a Substack where you can actually people can find you on Cook for Peace at juliediaz.substack.com. So let's just be here now, Julie. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to these days in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Yeah, I am here in Clarksdale, Mississippi, a transplant from about 4 years ago. And when I got here, I came from San Diego. That's not where I'm originally from, but I came here from San Diego. And when I got here, realized, even I knew this, but I really realized that food is a lot different here than it was in Southern California. So it became my mission to find farmers because I was accustomed to buying my produce directly from farmers. So I started looking for farmers. Within 2 days of being here, I found a farmer and bought what I could from her, found out just kept going and trying to find more places I could get a bigger variety of food. Um, and eventually I started teaching kids cooking, which I had been doing in San Diego. I talked to a woman who owned the local kind of co-op store, and she told me about a young man who was doing some work in the area, but I never could get in touch with him. So I went to a meeting about farmers markets, and I'm sitting next to this young man who's asking questions, and he's sounded really thoughtful and smart. And so I introduced myself. He was the person that had been trying to get in touch with all along. And so that was like the catalyst that got me going in Clarksdale to teach cooking classes and do events and just bring people together to cook together and eat together and have conversations together. And
That's amazing because you just planned it. You know, you ended up in Clarksdale, Mississippi because you were there to help your mom,
right.
who was in her transition period of, what happens when we get older. There's a good daughter to go there and help her. It was such a contrast to San Diego, California. But in so many ways, knowing you, Julie, I feel it's almost like you had to have that contrast for your vision of what you've always said is needed is that people who cook together and share stories together start to find a commonality that most people would not even know is possible. How do, that's such an important part for your vision of Cook for Peace. But how did you come to that idea about what cooking has to do with peaceful coexistence?
It was it just this was at a time there was a shooting in San Diego at a synagogue, and it was kind of close to where I lived, and it just it just shook me. And I thought, if people could come together and cook together and eat together, then we wouldn't have these problems. We could learn about each other and we can find ways to accept each other. We don't have to all be the same, but we can accept each other and learn to live together. And so that was really when Cook for Peace was born. It was just something in my head for a while.
Right, right. Because there's some relationship between the commonality that we're all planetary citizens. We're all on this earth together, right?
Right,
So there's something about, and we sometimes feel like we're separate from each other and that we're separate from the earth itself. But
right,
you being fascinated with organic gardening and food that comes from the earth and the health and well-being that comes from that is it's more than just going to the grocery store and buying your produce. When you're buying directly from the farmers, there's some connection there that stimulates health and well-being for people in ways that surprise them until they experience it. And you bring their attention to that. Not only the quality of the food, but the magic of bringing the flavors together and what can happen in a kitchen when people cook together. I mean, it's kind of amazing, Julie, on how I call it a cross-pollination process. How did you get connected to the power of food from the earth?
well, it was a long, I guess, a long process. Where when I grew up, where I grew up, people in the summer had gardens, and so we would have fresh things. It was always the same few vegetables. We would have that in the summer, but the rest of the year we had canned vegetables. It was I had really no connection to food until it was probably when my son, who this was about 20 years ago, my son had a health scare. And I thought I had been eating, I thought we had been eating pretty healthy, but we got all of our food from the grocery store. I don't know if I had ever been to a farmer's market before that. And he had this health scare, and the doctor said, you need to eat a lot more fruits and vegetables, cut out processed food. Um, so I did that, and we started getting more vegetables. And then I found out about a farmer's market we lived in Dallas at this time. Um, I found out about a farmer's market there. So we would drive down to the farmer's market and get produce there, and just, it was a lot of fun. We made dishes with the fresh produce, and uh 3 to 4 months after his health scare, we went back in, had another test, and all signs of it were gone because we had changed the way we ate. And
Wow.
so I thought, this is interesting. So I started reading books, and Michael Pollan and Jane Goodall had a couple of books that I read, and it's like, this is, I didn't really know. I had heard of organic before, but it was like, well, why would I want to buy that? Because the produce always looks worse than the other because no one bought it. So it just sat there um and rotted, I guess, in the grocery store. However, if I was buying it from the farmer, it was fresh. So I realized that that food tasted so good and so different from what I had experienced from food at the grocery
Oh,
store. And yeah, I just kept going. And then we moved to San Diego. And if you've ever been to Southern California, you know that the produce there is available year round. You can get pretty much anything fresh grown there any time of the year. And so I reached a point where we were buying pretty much all of our produce at the farmer's market. I would supplement on a few things at the grocery store, and we felt so much better. We all lost weight. We felt good. My digestion got very um regular.
yeah, that's a good thing.
And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that there was any issues before. Um,
Right.
and and it's just and the fresher the food is, the healthier it is. And the more nutritious or the better the soil is, the more nutrients are in the food. So your body, I know a lot of people don't think that what's in your food has anything to do with how your body works, but the nutrients that are in the food are there for a reason. They're there to run your body, to run the systems in your
Right.
body. So when you're deficient in those nutrients, then, then
Exactly.
you need to do supplements or, I don't really understand why they don't, or some people think, well, I'm just going to take these supplements, but I don't need to
Right.
get it in food. And in the food, it works better. The
Right.
supplements sometimes just go right through your body.
Absolutely. Well, that's a
Um,
really important point, though, is the story of it was the health scare that caused you to explore. And the doctor was pretty smart to tell you, what to eat. I'm not sure, not a lot of, I'm just speaking from my own experience here, but
right,
many, many people in the health field have not had much education in nutrition.
right.
So that means that you took it upon yourself, but he was the catalyst, and then you saw the health improve, and then it's kind of interesting where you're saying you grew up in a home where, you know, maybe you had some fresh food, but a lot of canned stuff. It wasn't until you had the exposure of there must be a better way, and then you found it. But then when you started to connect with healthy food and the difference in your own body, how did that impact your desire? Had you already been doing cooking classes? Because I think you were fascinated with cooking and we're teaching young children how to cook even before that, right? So,
I had started when I taught preschool in Dallas, and in those classes, I would do cooking with them, but it wasn't at the same level as what I do now. It was just, you know, they would bring in an ingredient and we would stick it in a pot and make soup or something.
mm-hmm.
These were like 3-year-olds, so I didn't expect that they could do a whole lot at that time. I've since changed my opinion on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then when we moved to San Diego and I was teaching preschool there, and our director challenged all the teachers to come up with an enrichment class that they could offer to the kids after school. And I thought I could teach cooking because I had been doing for my family cooking with fresh vegetables, and I thought, well, that would be really fun to teach the kids because maybe they don't do that at home. So yeah, I went to the director and I said, yeah, I have this idea. She said, write it up and I'll present it to the board. I was the only one of all the teachers to do it. And the board said, we'd love it. So I started officially being a cooking instructor. I guess it was about 15 years ago, somewhere around there.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and the kids loved it, and from that we had a food business. The teachers said, your food is so good you need to sell it. So because the kids would bring the food that we had made in class to the class, and the teachers would taste it and they're like, this is amazing. So we started a food business. I'm teaching preschool. I'm teaching kids cooking, starting a food business, and yeah, it
It's
was it
just
was
been growing.
a crazy time, but I enjoyed it so much and I learned so much. Um, and for the food business, we tried to buy as much as we could from the farmers at the farmers market. And so that was unusual because most of the food vendors at the farmers market, they bought from, the big box stores and restaurant supply. And so that really set us apart. And we had a really loyal customer base, I guess, that just they would come and say, "Your food is amazing. I can just taste the love in your food."
Aw.
And of course, that made me want to keep doing it. And
That's great, Julie, because there is a lot of love that goes into the food. And I'm sure when you're working with the children, they had that experience, as you being a mentor, and that probably impacted their family, because they'd go home and, teach their parents, perhaps maybe even their parents didn't have the experience that, would have been helpful for them to have a healthy household, right? It's kind of
right,
like so learning from the kids and create family dynamics of cooking together as a family can be so healing as well. And I'm just curious about how you learned, because a lot of times people, I had I know you have a biochemistry background, right? That's what your
well, biology.
biology background.
Yeah,
I worked with a biochemist one time. I was learning about nutrition. He said every week you should find one new vegetable that you don't know anything about
yeah,
and include it in your diet.
right.
So how did you learn about the the diversity of nature's bounty? How did you learn about the different vegetables? And then how did you know what to do with them? Because sometimes people buy stuff and they don't know what to do with it and then it rots, right? So what's
Right.
your theory on that?
Right. Well, maybe that's part of the scientist in me. When I would get, because one of the things that we did was join a CSA, which is a community supported agriculture. So we would buy a box or get a box every other week, from a farm, and there would be vegetables in there that I didn't know. I'd never seen before. Fortunately, this farm would include different ways or one way to prepare that vegetable. And this was like the early stages of the internet, but you could still look up things and well, like kohlrabi, for example. I would just look up kohlrabi and find different ways that you could prepare it. And yeah, I just would experiment and learn as much as I could about the vegetable. And I still do that. I mean, there's very few vegetables, especially here in Mississippi, that I'm not familiar with. Um, but most vegetables, when I see it, I know what it is, or I know how to find out what it
Right, right.
is.
But
Um,
that's the idea of cooking and experimenting in a little way,
right,
like forming a relationship with the vegetable, right? And then
right,
experimenting because one of the classes I attended with you online, which was interesting, where it's like, what's in your cupboard? Why don't we just make something special with love that's in your cupboard? So how do you approach that in terms, because you never know what's in people's cupboards, but you kind of have a general understanding of what's possible. How do you guide that?
right. Yeah, well, I feel like I didn't know at the time, but I've always had an intuitive way with food. I didn't know what that meant. I just always seemed to know if, like, if I read a recipe, if it sounded right. Um, if it didn't sound right, I didn't want to try it. So what I do now, and I do this quite often, I don't know what it is I'm going to be cooking. Um, I'll I'll go somewhere and get the ingredients and prepare them right there at whatever event I'm at. Um, but I know because of my experience with it, I know that those vegetables can go together and these spices go together. And it's not a secret. It's not something that's just mine that I'm the only one that can do this. Other people can learn how to do that. And that's one of the things that what you're talking about, I wanted to show people um, that. you can just go in your pantry and say, okay, I have this and this. Those will go together. And I'll go to the refrigerator and you have this vegetable and this vegetable. Yeah, those will go together too. And then you make a dish with that. And this spice goes with this spice. If I want it to taste like Mexican food, I'll put cumin and coriander and chili powder, maybe a little cayenne pepper in it. It's going to taste Mexican. If I want it to taste Indian, I'll use those spices and also put in turmeric, and maybe some fenugreek. I mean, most people don't have fenugreek, but maybe. Um, and it'll taste Indian. So that's what I want people to learn, that or understand that they can do that too.
Uh,
And it's easy to do. It takes a little effort, but it's easy and it's definitely something that I think anyone can learn.
Absolutely. Well, it's the relationship between food. I think we were talking about this earlier. It's like to us, we go, of course, how you feel has a lot to do with what you eat, because your body is a living system. And you were speaking earlier about how your digestive system became even more amazing, more regular than perhaps what you even knew was possible because you got used to kind of maybe being a little sluggish or, it's interesting what our digestion, what they call the gut is the second brain, right?
Hmm.
So how your body adapts to the food and what it does with the food has a whole lot to do with how we feel, how we think, how we sleep, right? It may even
Right.
have some to do with emotional and mental health. Have you discovered that for yourself as well?
Yes. And actually there have been a lot of studies done on the relationship with food and mental health. And the standard American diet, which is loaded with processed food and, you know, just a lot of junk, does not help your mental health. The things that are in those foods actually cause your brain to go slower and, feel tireder and, maybe depressed. When you eat real food, when you're eating food that's high nutrients, and I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't say, well, this food is good for your brain and this food is good for your brain. Um, However, I can say that when you eat, and I don't like the word diet, when you eat food that is mostly plants, um, as fresh as possible with high nutrient content, which means it's going to be probably organic or regeneratively grown. It's grown in soil that has a lot of nutrients, real nutrients, not artificial nutrients. Um, then those things are going to help you with your mental health. It helps your brain to clear. It helps you to think better. It helps you to, have better thoughts. I think I just said that. I must not have eaten very well this morning.
That's what's really interesting is because we all need to think about what is the standard American diet that we are programmed through commercials and advertisements and billboards and social media feeds. It's like we're drawn to things like that make up the standard American diet because it's easy, it's convenient, and it might even be less expensive than what you're suggesting. But in the long run, there's an expense to that causes people to not feel well, miss work, all the things that happen when you're not living, you're not honoring your own body's living system. So there's always a price to pay on the front end or on the back end, so to speak,
Right,
right?
right.
So
Yeah.
I'm just curious about what is your normal routine? Let's say What does your refrigerator look like? What's for dinner at Julie's house? What are you eating for lunch? I mean, give us some sort of a, if it's not standard American diet, what is it? Tell us.
Well, every day I have a green smoothie, and it's not a green powder smoothie. It's a green smoothie that's made with it could be one green, it could be four green, different greens in it. And some celery is usually in there, and maybe two or three fruits are in there, like an apple, an orange, some frozen berries, some a protein source, which is going to be flax meal or hemp seeds, and um, and that's what I have. I make enough that I have some for the afternoon too. So I have that. Um, and then I usually have these little rice cakes that I put hummus and avocado on. And that's my breakfast. And lunch is typically something leftover, that's, you know, a bean dish or a soup or just something that I've got in the refrigerator. And then my nighttime meal is again beans and vegetables, and maybe instead of beans, I've got tofu. Um, but one thing that is constant throughout is greens. I have greens in every meal, and I can tell when I'm not getting enough greens. I My digestion kind of gets more sluggish. Like
Mm-hmm.
we need to just have some sauteed greens. I've got
Mm-hmm.
to have that.
Awesome.
Um, and I mean, my sluggish digestion may not be the same as your sluggish digestion, but I've just gotten used to my
I
digestion the
hear
way it
you.
is. It hasn't
Right.
always been this way.
Right.
Um,
So, Julie, I want to ask you is a lot of people are too busy to actually do the planning and preparation that they need for their food. Do you have some ideas on how to create, like, in so many ways, the suggestions that you're making could happen if people felt, if they knew with what was possible. Because if they knew they could do it, it's simple, it's
mhm.
easy, and you can make time for it. But what kind of planning would you suggest for a busy mom or stay at home? I'm just saying about some people work from home and it's not a problem, but a lot of people that are on that treadmill of, got to be at work at this time, got to get to school, kids to school at this time. And they're just rushing around all the time. So they're looking for convenience. How can you help them create convenience with a plan that helps them be healthier?
Yeah, it does take some effort. And there are some time savers that you can use. Like I mentioned, beans. I cook my own beans, but I have kind of a routine that I go through when I do that. If you need to buy canned beans, buy canned beans. They're still very nutritious. You can still use them. And if you need to buy vegetables that are already cut up, they're going to cost more, but you can buy like a container of cut up onion or cut up carrots or anything, a bag of broccoli florets. Um, and then you can just throw it all together in a skillet, when you're ready to cook. You just get a skillet, you put a little bit of extra virgin olive oil in there. Some people don't want to use oil, but I'm okay with using extra virgin olive oil. Um, Saute your onion and some garlic. You can buy jars of already, minced garlic. Put that in there. Put your other chopped up vegetables in there. And um, and then at the end, you drain your beans, rinse it, and dump that in. You've got a meal. You can buy the the pre-cooked rice. You just heat that up in your microwave. You've got a meal, and that's like 20 minutes.
Right, there you go. There you go.
So,
And a lot less expensive, right? And more
yes,
nutritious. That's going to
much
help
more
you.
nutritious.
Right. And so the other thing is that we were saying is about the love that's in the food, that people can taste the love that's in the food. And I'm just curious about that because when people are, instead of, there's this attitude about, well, I'm hungry, I got to get something to eat, and then I'm moving on to my life, right? But there's something about nourishing yourself and with a gratitude and understanding where the food came from and understanding, like you said, your connection with the farmers and so forth somehow supports the digestion. And I mean, is that where the love comes from? I'm just guessing.
Um, yeah, well, I mean, I feel that when I'm cooking, I like the process. Actually, the process is a good mental health tool of getting in the kitchen and chopping your vegetables and, you know, maybe if I bought that vegetable at the farmer's market from a specific farmer, I'm thinking about that farmer and oh, all the care that farmer put into the vegetables and so I'm cutting it and then, it's kind of a healing process for me, I
Right.
I think.
It's
And
like a
so I think
meditate. It's like,
that's where the love comes from, is what
Mhm.
you're putting into it. Um, you could be angry. I'm not saying that you can't cook angry or frustrated or stressed. You can do that. But remember that that may come through in the food.
Right.
I mean, maybe you're going to burn it, or maybe you're going to,
Right. So that
put too
sounds
much
like,
salt or,
yeah,
um,
yeah, it's almost like the rushing through to get to the next thing to do. The way you're describing the relationship to the food and the process is a way of being. It's a way of being. It's almost like a meditation. I've often heard is that, that meditation, chop wood, carry water. It's
mhm,
like it's that conversation is that you're really in the moment with the being of what this food that came from the earth, right? That's nourishing you. And then you're a citizen of the earth. And then what will be your output? You know what I mean?
right,
How will you be a contribution? Because it's
right.
all connected. And I think that's partly what you've discovered because you've traveled. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the idea of we're all connected. It doesn't matter whether you're in Mexico or you're in Korea or you're in Dallas, Texas, right? You found this idea of cook for peace because of your exposure, the travel, the food, and the commonality. So tell us a story about that. How did that cook for peace come through for you? I know
Yeah,
that
well,
you mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned about the shooting was the catalyst, but then it's kind of your travels have taken you even beyond, that was a catalyst, and then what's happened?
right. Well, from that, I mean, what I was envisioning from that was people in my where I live, and people from my community coming together. And then I started thinking, well, why couldn't I go to another country and have that connection in another country? Um, so um, I mean, mostly it's been Korea and well, I went to Italy and I cooked there. I didn't cook with anybody in Italy, but that was fun in itself. Um, but in Korea, I have cooked with Koreans and a Korean family, and yeah, and learning how their relationship to food, which is different than than my relationship. Um, but I was really bold when I went to Korea the first time. Um, I'm involved in an organization called Slow Food, and I just thought I'm going to go and introduce myself to the slow food people in Korea. So I went to their office and knocked on the door, and they opened the door and they're like, "No, no, no!" But I was wearing a slow food cap, and when she saw that, she was like, "Oh!" And she invited us in, and I've kept connected with this woman, and when I was in Italy last year for a international meeting, she was there. And when I first walked in to the venue, and I hear somebody going, Julie, and I turn around and there she is. So, there I've got a connection. And then when we went to Korea again in the winter, over the winter, and I saw her again, and we actually got to share a meal together. And it was amazing. Um, just the generosity and the kindness, and we're all the same. She she lives in another part of the world, yet and she barely spoke English, and I don't speak Korean, and we we connected over food. Um, so
Yeah,
that's my vision, is that we can connect with people from all over the world. And I started a series I just when I did some lives on social media where I just cooked a dish from another country, and I talked about that country. It was related to immigrants, but it doesn't have to be about immigrants to this country. Just connecting to the people from the other
right,
country, and
exactly.
and realizing that they have a history that we don't know about. They have lives we don't know about. Yet if we knew about them, we could care about them.
Exactly.
So I think that's what I want. That's what I hope for, is that we can start caring about people who are different from us, and realizing that they have they have lives too that are just as important as ours. And that is going to heal. I've gone from healing the body with food to connecting with people over food, connecting to the earth with food, and now I want to bring the world together through food, learning about, you know, learning about other people. And
Exactly. Well, you remind me of Anthony Bourdain, in his show when he cooked around the world, or well, he
yeah,
he he met with people around the world,
yeah.
and there are others that learned a lot from him as well. So, Julie, I think you're really on track with I call it your soulful contribution. This has been a vision that's been coming through you since you were a little kid. And it's gone through stages. And so I'm also noticing that you're really bringing forward some writing. So you have your own Substack, and you're writing about food. It's also the relationship between, the diversity of nature, the diversity of humanity. How do they connect, and what has food and well-being got to do with it? I think there's more that's emerging for you in terms of, could we actually live in a peaceful world if we really learned to appreciate diversity? And isn't that what nature is teaching us? I mean, is that because the writing is coming through you, I know it. So I'm just curious about what's guiding you in your writing, and what does it have to do with your cooking? Are they connected in any way?
Yes, I definitely agree that diversity is the way that we're going to heal. Diversity of not just food, but people, diversity of ideas. I mean, yeah, I have my ideas, and somebody else has their ideas, and maybe I don't like their ideas, but they have a right to have different ideas. I don't have to tell them that they have to. That's one reason why I'm not like a staunch plant-based, you can't eat meat. If you feel you need to eat meat, that's fine. There's certain parts of the world where they don't have the access to vegetables, so they eat a lot of meat. I can't tell them, you need to change that. You need to, because that's not who they are.
Right.
So I think there's room for everyone to be who they are and still have a peaceful world. We just have to, I don't know, maybe it's very simplistic, but I feel like it's a simple solution that I feel like simple solutions can be the answer. It's not easy, but it's simple.
That's a good
So,
distinction. That's a good distinction. And you know what? There are people reaching out right now. And I think it started more so during the pandemic, where people were forced to stay in place and really take a look around about what's working, what's not working. And you moving from California to Mississippi, but having a global vision. What do you see? Who's looking for you now, Julie? And how can they best find you and what's happening next?
um, well, I'm still on Facebook at A Cooking Revolution. Um, I've got Clarksdale Cooks on Facebook, but yeah, A Cooking Revolution is the main one. And I have a website, acookingrevolution.com, and that's about to get a revamp. So you can look at it now. It may be different in another 2 or 3 months. Um, and then I'm on Substack at juliediaz.substack.com. And I just want to say on Substack, I just write about whatever comes through. And it could be about food, it could be cook for peace, but some of my stories are just about maybe my growing up. And it may not be about food, but no, I don't want to say always. I usually have a recipe that goes with it. I kind of bring it around and attach a recipe to
Okay,
the end of the story.
that's perfect.
Um, so, it's a variety of things. I've got interviews with farmers on there. Um, just a wide variety of things. Just whatever I happen to be
Right.
inspired to
Hmm.
write.
Well, we're really happy that you're a facilitator in the Living the Potential Network and that you'll be doing some cooking demonstrations, community cooking with us in the future. And I can't wait to, I think the quality of staying healthy with the seasons. How do we do that? It's like I see gourds and so forth, and someone have some questions in the network for you, I think, that will support us. And taking that on, like what new vegetable are you going to introduce yourself to this week? And what are you going to do with it? And if you don't know, ask Julie Diaz, A Cooking Revolution. So thank you, Julie, for being with us today. I look forward to continuing to learn and grow with you and celebrate nature. It's such a beautiful place to be when we understand our connection to it. The three harmonies, connection to nature, connecting to myself, and connecting to you and all others who care. Thank you for being such a bright light. Take care, Julie.
Thank you, Renee Beth.